My replica of the Harold Holt Swim Center still needs this staircase, which is going to be a nightmare, but I have to do it because these stairs lead to a fitness center that is run by a guy who watches this show. Massive shout out to all the Harold Holt Pool employees who have been supporting this show since weirdly early on. I love you. I hope I don't get you fired. In 1966, hostilities in the Australian butter margarine war are at their peak. On one side, you have a margarine manufacturer whose name is Dick Crebin and his wildly successful pro-margarine mascot, Mrs. Jones. And on the other side, you have the butter producers of Australia, backed by the government, who have regulated margarine production into oblivion. But just 8 months after the Mrs. Jones campaign launched, this is the front page of the Sydney Morning Herald. And then the very next day, the New South Wales government backflips and upholds the quotas. 160 margarine factory workers are laid off overnight. This puts Dick Crebin in a difficult position because the Mrs. Jones PR campaign is wildly successful at winning over the hearts and minds of the public, but this isn't translating to public policy. So at the start of 1967, the CEO of McCann Erickson, who's in charge of the Mrs. Jones campaign, says, I want to bring in some fresh talent. What we need is somebody who does not work for McCann Erickson. We need somebody who does not work in advertising, full stop. We need someone who is a drinking buddy of mine I've known since I was a teenager. What we need is a seedy, amoral, drug-addicted, alcoholic journalist. We need Maxwell Newton. Now, if you've been following this series, you know exactly who that is and what is about to happen. Because remember, it's the start of 1967. So Maxwell Newton rocks up and he says, so there are legal limits on how much table margarine we can sell. But there are no limits on how much cooking margarine we can sell because it's 90% beef tallow and no one in their right mind would ever think it's a butter substitute. Here's my pitch. Let's lie and say disgusting cooking margarine is just as good as table margarine for spreading on toast. Now, if we were to do that, on the one hand, that would be illegal. But on the other hand, who cares? And so in 1967, Mrs. Jones pivoted from saying margarine production quota laws are a bit outdated to a campaign telling people the government doesn't want you spreading animal fat on your toast. Are you a coward? Are you a goody two-shoes coward? Which is so successful that margarine sales cut so hard into butter sales that it draws the attention of the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia himself, John Blackjack McEwen, who is so angry about it that he turns around several weeks later, blackmails the Japanese ambassador to Australia, specifically looking for dirt on Maxwell Newton. Because Blackjack McEwen is a hardcore protectionist and Mrs. Jones and Maxwell Newton are hardcore libertarian free trade advocates. And it's this second phase of the Mrs. Jones campaign and this widespread adoption of cooking margarine as a butter substitute that signals the end of protectionism and of Blackjack's career in politics. Because Mrs. Jones doesn't just make margarine production quotas unpopular, it made them obsolete. And by the time they were officially abolished by the Whitlam government in 1975, it had been years since state governments had really bothered to enforce them. Anyway, that's the story of the Australian butter war, and it's how we legalized margarine. And if you would like to know what any of this has to do with Harold Holt, please stick around because we are going to get back to basics.